it was. Do, 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 do,
Kramer, because she did
do,
it today
do.
on our meeting.
Oh, you know what? It could be. Maybe it is. I don't know. Welcome everybody. I was singing the waiting song because you were waiting. I made you wait on me because I'm the late one. I'm just gonna apologize for being late, and we'll get our show started here. So this is a nice background. If you recognize, if you're a regular in Vegas, so you recognize that there's the Bellagio Hoover Hotel over here, and the famous Bellagio fountains, and that's the Paris over there. So you can see a little bit of the Eiffel Tower. I don't know if I turn that way. Now the picture doesn't have any more of it in there, but I'm still what did I say? I'm in the west, and my heart's in the east. I'm in the far west. So I went a little farther west over the holiday of Passover, and I'm just getting back now in my mind. I have to take the casino off my my new screensaver on my phone. Give it up. You didn't win the big jackpot, Rabbi. So you just get over it and get back on with life. Anyway, I hope you all are well and having a wonderful day. I had a mazel tov I wanted to share. First of all, one of our old friends in Denver. He doesn't live here anymore, but he used to work at Brooklyn Pizza, and he was a lovely community member, many years, a yeshiva student. Mendel Hershkovich, maybe you remember him, lovely kid, got engaged yesterday to the daughter of the granddaughter of Rabbi and Mrs. Heisler, who used to live here, have since moved to the East Coast. So it was kind of like a Denver simcha, even though none of it happened here, but mazel tov to them. And also, also, one second, I wanted to mention a request for prayers and well-being for someone else who I remember, for Chaya Bas Tamalei, a very dear member of our broader family in Toronto, my wife's Auntie Carol, a very dear friend, and she unfortunately I think has complications from corona. She's an amazing lady with a lot of medical history. She actually is an incredible story. She early in her life, in my wife's childhood, she was in a coma for many weeks, maybe months even. It was a long time, and it was really one of those cases where they thought that maybe she wasn't going to come out of it. It wasn't going to survive. They would talked about pulling the plug, God forbid, and back and forth. It was one of those crazy cases, and she eventually one day she just woke up out of the coma, came out of it, and she told them, that she had been conscious all along and was very well aware. Like she said that she hated the smell of the lotion that they were rubbing on her to keep her skin well cared for. They would put lotion on it. She hated the smell of it. And that's, she was conscious and cognizant the whole time. And so she came out of this coma. An incredible woman, incredible story. A double amputee, but a happy, a very happy, active life for decades since that point. And you can imagine if they had taken the advice of some of the doctors that said that, that there's no coming back from such a medical calamity, and pull the plug, God forbid, she, her life wouldn't have been led. And it's an incredible story. I sometimes retell, she's an incredible woman. Anyway, now I think she needs our prayers for a speedy recovery from some complications with coronavirus. God willing, she should be well, and we should hear another wonderful medical, super story as well from her as well. So Chaya Bas Tamalei. Okay. I also just lastly wanted to mention that this week is the yard site actually of one of our Sunday school students. This is another sort of a medical story, a sad story, but 5 years ago this week we had a young boy. His name was Yoav Weinstein of blessed memory, and Yoav was had a very interesting syndrome he was born with and lived with his entire life that they never really had a name for it. It was a very unique thing to him. He never ate, really. In his incredibly early infancy, they recognized he was just not eating, and he didn't eat, and he never ate. He basically lived from a feeding tube his entire life, and he was stricken with terrible body pains and all kinds of things. He was in and out of the hospital his entire life. It's a miracle that he lived as long as he did. And he lived till he was 10. He was in our Sunday school, sometimes in a wheelchair, sometimes up and about, for a couple of years. An incredible little boy, and left this world at age 10. His parents, very dear, and grandmother Tommy Stillerman, is one of our Hebrew school educators, and so she always makes sure to mark his yard site, and so I just want to mention that, and we pray that his little neshama, his precious soul, has an aliyah in heaven, from being remembered by us as well. It's interesting, though, just as an aside, it's something very relevant to talk about. The date of his actual yard site of the anniversary of his passing is what is recognized every year as Yom HaShoah, as Holocaust Memorial Day. Just happens to be that's the day. And one of the things that we make a point of doing, it's actually Friday on the Hebrew calendar, as I mentioned yesterday, but it's bumped forwards to be recognized tomorrow. And the ADL event that I mentioned, it starts at 5:30. You can still register on the ADL website. But one of the things that we always think about are the children, are these precious lives, children who perished, I say perished, but it makes it sound innocent. They were brutally murdered, I should say. That is really what happened to them. And it's, they are amongst those, so many murdered by the Nazis. May their names be erased. And part of this week and this day, and that is that recognition, that remembrance, and that we try to remember them. Now, I want to share the following thought, though, which will go along with that, and I think you'll find interesting. Someone showed me many years ago. I was shown this by a local colleague, Rabbi Yechiel Erlanger. Yechiel Erlanger showed me the following. Very beautiful, very interesting. And it happens to be the comment of Rashi's, our foremost Torah commentator, a comment of Rashi's on the story of the Exodus. Very relevant. And I'll tell you why I learned it from him, or where I learned it from him. He and I we jointly taught a commemorative educational evening after the tragic death of a 21-year-old baby of one of our students. It was some of our students, Craig and Melanie Eisen, very, very dear friends to this day. They had a very, very, very challenged pregnancy, and it was an unbelievable story. Talk about another similar story to the one about Auntie Carol that I just mentioned. They were given a diagnosis based on an ultrasound that their child was going to be severely handicapped, and they were told that they should terminate the pregnancy. And they came to me in tears, and we talked about it, and it was a very, very, very difficult time in their lives. I don't think they would mind telling this, because we did retell the story subsequently at this event about which I'm about to describe to you. It turned out that, again, every case is different, and I'm not trying to offer any kind of a blanket guidelines or rulings for anybody else's situation. But I'll tell you, in their case, based on what was going on, the right thing to do was to sit and wait. The right thing to do was not to terminate the pregnancy based on what was thought to be the case based on the ultrasound. And they didn't terminate the pregnancy. Happened to be that the baby was born quite early. So an early pregnancy. There was clearly some problem in the pregnancy, but the baby was 100% fine. Fine. No problem whatsoever. Beautiful. And it was an unbelievable story. I mean, you cannot imagine obviously it was a very early pregnancy. I think the 5th month, 6th month, maybe very early. And the baby was in the NICU. And I personally went to go visit the baby in the NICU. It was a miracle baby. And it was an unbelievable story. Now, the ending of the story was not a happy one, because, as is not infrequently the case, this is one of the significant risks of preemies, that they occasionally, they just fail to survive for no real understood reason. And the baby died at 21 days. Not for any reason, not because he was born ill, but that is something that happens. That was a very talk about a gut-wrenching story you cannot imagine, right? Up the roller coaster ride of this poor family, they, thinking they were, imagining, told by the doctors that they're going to have some significantly handicapped child. Then they ended up, pushing forward and seeing what would be, bearing a completely healthy child and then losing that child 21 days. I mean, the roller coaster, you can't imagine. And no one should know from such a difficult ride. And the rule is the Jewish practice is that when a child dies like that, and this may sound strange, not only is there that the parents don't sit Shiva, there's not even a funeral. It's a very, very, very interesting thing. And that's why Rabbi Erlanger and I were asked to do an educational evening for the family, for the community, for anybody that cared about them and wanted to understand why this is Jewish practice. The evening was held at the predecessor to the Jewish Experience Center where we now are, which was 10 South Ivy Street, which was actually a home. It was the father, Craig Eisen's family home where he grew up. If you remember, his parents of blessed memory, they grew up in that house, and he had given the Jewish Experience that house to use as our outreach center before. And we had the educational evening in that home. And here's what we said: the process of mourning, of sitting Shiva, of saying Kaddish, of having a big funeral where eulogies are said, that is done really not on behalf of the mourners, on behalf of the deceased. Because the deceased is in any case, it has nothing to do with a child. In any case, when we do those things, we mourn for the deceased because they have we need to do everything in our power to convey or confer spiritual merit on the deceased. The deceased is going through the process that all of us will face at the end of our lives, a process of judgment, process of scrutiny, a process of moving through a purification process onto, God willing, a bright eternal future in the world to come. But there's a process there, and that process includes judgment, and judgment is never easy. And we, the relatives, those who cared about the deceased, we do everything that we can to speak up on their behalf in that heavenly judgment process by showing what they meant to us, how meaningful their lives were to us, what they gave us, what they did, what they were. And all of that is a credit to them. So all of our mourning, by and large, is designed, it's not for us, it's not for the mourners. We don't do it for us. We do it for them. We do it for them because they need it in that judgment process. They need all the credit they can get, and we want to shower it upon them because we care about them. Now, when you're talking about a child, an infant, or any child under bar mitzvah, like their child, or like Yoav Weinstein of blessed memory, whose yahrzeit was this, he died at age 10. If a person is not bar or bas mitzvah, God has no expectations of that person. They're not obligated in the commandments. There are no expectations of a child like that. We want to obviously educate them and train them so that when they are adults and there are expectations, that they'll be able to fulfill those expectations and they'll live a healthy and a righteous adult life. But children, there's no expectations on them. They didn't fall short or accomplish. They're people in training. And therefore, a child that dies doesn't have to go through a process of judgment. What can they be judged on? They weren't even, the commandments, the obligations weren't even relevant to them yet. You understand? There's no judgment for them. They're considered to be righteous and to go straight through, to skip over that process and to go right to the world to come, as it were. They're not going to be judged. And therefore we don't sit Shiva for them in that way. A very young child, there's nothing done at all. Maybe for an older child, the custom, I think, is to say Kaddish for 30 days. A very short time, but it's very, very little is done for them because there's very little needed. Now, the mourners, of course, the family members that are bereft of a life that was meaningful to them, a parent that lost a child, lo aleinu, God forbid. I mean, that's something they need to be comforted, and the community needs to rally around them and comfort them as if they had to face the greatest loss imaginable, which they did, and that's what happens. And the point of the educational evening that Rabbi Erlinger and I did there was to inform the community that even though there's no shiva and even though there's no mourning, there's a need here that these two people, this family that's experiencing this loss needs you. They need your support. They need your warmth. They need your embrace. Be there for them. The fact that there's no shiva, no kaddish doesn't mean that they don't need comfort. That was the point. But the deceased doesn't need our merit because the deceased has no demerit, not a single one. A perfect righteous life going straight to the world to come. And here's what Rabbi Erlinger pointed out in the name of his illustrious grandfather of blessed memory, Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. And he said the following. Interestingly, if we look into the Torah story of the Exodus, okay, the Exodus, the early part of Egyptian slavery included Pharaoh's decree that the Jewish baby boys should be thrown into the Nile and drowned, right? Very famous. He was told by his stargazing advisors that there would be a Jewish boy who would be born who would eventually lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. He was trying to head that off at the pass. He said, no, not on my watch, and we'll just drown them all, and we won't have that problem. We know how the story of Moshe in the little basket survived that decree of baby boys being drowned in the Nile. And we know the rest of the story. Now that in Parshas Shemos there, if you look at the where the story is told right in the Torah, you'll see interestingly that it says that Moshe's birth was quite fascinating, in fact, because the decree that Pharaoh made that every Jewish boy born should be thrown into the Nile. So that was, that was terrible, and it had it sort of inspired a general celibacy within the Jewish people that were basically unwilling, uninterested in bearing any children, so that Pharaoh should throw them and drown them into the Nile, right? So that there was a mass decision at the time that the Jewish people would just not bear any children that Pharaoh should drown, right? And yet, the brilliant and correct argument was made by none other than Miriam, Moshe's would-be sister. She was already born, and she said, "How can you do that? Your decree is worse than Pharaoh's. Pharaoh made a decree on the boys. You're making a decree even on the girls, because if you don't have any kids, there won't even be girls." Now, ultimately, her parents accepted her wisdom, and they reunited, and Moses was born. So the story that goes along like that. Now, on that story, Rashi shares the following comment: that there's in fact that not only was Miriam's argument correct that their choice was worse than Pharaoh's vis-a-vis the girls, because now there would not even be girls who Pharaoh would let live, but also Rashi points out it's worse for the boys. Now, what does that mean? So what would be the point? So we're going to bear Jewish children so Pharaoh can drown them in the Nile? And Rashi said, you know what? Yes, that still would be better than them not being born at all. Why? So he says, because even though they may not live long lives, even though they may be infants drowned in the Nile, if Pharaoh gets his way, but even having come a soul that comes into this world, that's born as a human being, even for a little period of time, even for 21 days, is then able to go on to the world to come. And that in and of itself is worthwhile, incredibly worthwhile. that Rashi there in that comment is pointing out the point that's like this. Each and every soul, is coming from a place. Again, I apologize for getting a little bit on the spiritual and mystical side in front of a hotel in Las Vegas, but the point is like this, that every one of us is a soul that comes from a very lofty place, enters this world for a period of time, and hopefully leads our lives well enough to then go on to an eternal afterlife in the world to come. That's the journey from the world of souls to the world of eternity. And this life is just a span of time in the middle. If a person doesn't get that span of time in the middle, they won't get to go on the rest of the journey. The soul is just in that limbo waiting zone, waiting to be born. But if a child is born, if that soul comes down, enters a body, and there's a child that's born, even if it's for a short time, then now that soul will go on from here to the world to come. And especially as tragic as it is to, God forbid, to lose a child, but what we understand about children is that they came into this world temporarily and for a short time as a lofty soul that needed to be here for a moment and had nothing much to accomplish, no expectations, no post-life judgment period. They go straight on to the world to come. And that's the reason why we don't sit Shiva or mourn or say Kaddish for the loss of a child. It's incredibly tragic. We shouldn't know from such things. We don't want that to be the case. But we also know that soul is somehow taken a short, straight journey from the world of souls into this world and out and on to the world to come. And it's and not that we ask for that, but we also they don't need our merit. They are doing fine. They are well on their way. We all should be so devoid and so innocent of demerit as such pure, holy souls when they come in and they go on. And that was certainly the case with Yoav Weinstein of blessed memory, whose yahrzeit was this week. And I don't know if his parents or his grandmother will end up hearing this, but he was he was a wonderful kid, and he went through incredible health difficulties every day of his life that we most of us would never know. I've never known such health difficulties as he experienced. And I was there by his bedside many, many times. But at the same time, if he had an off day, or if he complained as anyone naturally would with such challenges, he's not held accountable, responsible. He's considered a perfect soul in our eyes. He's perfect. He didn't even make it to bar mitzvah. He didn't miss out on one single thing that God was waiting for him to do. He didn't miss one single thing. And then it's an incredible righteousness that he takes with him, and on he goes to the world to come. And I think maybe we'll just, we'll conclude the topic for today as follows. I probably would have talked about this tomorrow, but it seems like today was its day. We're gonna remember many, many, many people whose lives were brutally cut short by the Nazis in the Holocaust. And that's something that's remembered now by many, and additionally, and perhaps primarily, it's also their memories are recalled and on Tisha B'Av, which is our traditional day of recalling all kinds of tragic losses like that. But whenever we recall them in whatever way we choose to commemorate their lives, there's two ways, if you will, to look at their loss. Certainly, number one, words can't describe the tragic, bitter sadness of all of those who were lost and their lives cut short, and the potential that they would have had, the potential that children would have grown into adulthood, would have been able to do amazing things. Think about how many more millions and millions of Jews there would be today had those 6 million not been taken from us so brutally. But in addition, we can take perhaps a little comfort from, at least so much as the children are concerned. Anyone who lived their lives, any one of them who was born, a soul that came into this world for whatever length of time, has had an opportunity to make their way through this world to the world to come. And I don't think we need to differentiate, because whether they were children or whether they're brutally murdered for being Jews, we refer to them as kadoshim. The concept of kadoshim means that they were extremely holy. One of the holiest things that a person can do is, in fact, is give their lives for being Jewish. And even if they didn't want to die, that doesn't take away from the fact that they were killed for being Jews. They were killed because they were Jews. And that is an incredible sanctification of God's name. It's an incredible holiness. And unquestionably, they are as it were, fast tracked. I think it was the right say, fast track to the world to come from everything that they suffered, from everything that happened to them. And even though there's so much more greatness that each one of them could have achieved had they been alive, no one is interested in their lives being shortened, because every day, every moment is potential. But in the way, looking in hindsight, at least one can say that with clarity that that they went on to their eternal, to a beautiful eternal afterlife, having experienced what they were put through. And so, for what it's worth, we remember them in that way, both the positives and the and the negatives, of course, of what was done. And when we should hopefully use any kind of such commemorative moment to crystallize and to solidify our own inspiration to use every moment of life that we do have in the best way possible, because that's what it's all about. The name of the real loss and the real tragedy is, because they'll go to the world to come, but the tragedy is that they didn't have more moments. The moments are what's precious. The opportunities, every moment is an opportunity, and their lives cut short where that's the shortcut, less opportunities. And what we want for ourselves is to treasure and to value and to appreciate our opportunities. What are they? What are our opportunities? Every moment of life, if you really want to respond appropriately to the tragic murder of 6 million holy Jews, it would be to live every moment from now on of your life as a proud holy Jew. That's what we can do. And then that was one thing that we could take away, we could think about. I hope it would be that. All right, folks. I hope this was not my intended topic. I think today's Live at 5 will be taught tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and everything that I meant to say today and got sidetracked I will try to say tomorrow. Hope you have a meaningful week and a healthy week and a holy week. And I will see you, God willing, tomorrow on Live at 5.